But we have here a few amazing panelists coming in here. I'll give you a spoiler. The conclusion of this panel is going to be, like every panel, that content is king. But we have here a few of the industry's best brains to tell us how and why. So with no further ado, let's welcome Rene Rechtman, Samir Deen, Aroon Purie, and Tom Pachis. If anybody looked at it and said, how come Shaul, Olmert, who is known in this industry, became so young and beautiful? This is the PlayBuzz well-kept secret. The co-founder of PlayBuzz, chief product officer, and the guy that built one of the most successful and virally spread products in the history of the Israeli industry. So, and as you can see, we have a very international flavor with people all over the world. So after today, we've been to some serious issues. Now let's talk a little bit about how people can decompress. So, let's start with a quick maybe round of introduction. In honor of our former Prime Minister and President, we'll start from the left side. Aroon, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself, about your company?
Well, I'm from the India Today Group. I founded this company 40 years ago. It's now, it started off as a magazine, a news magazine called India Today. We have about 20-odd magazines. Now we're into television with 4 24-hour news channels and many websites which support all these publications and television. So we're a multimedia group in India.
Yeah, Rene.
Yeah, hi, I'm Rene. I work for a small company called Disney. We sold our company
Can you repeat the name?
to Disney. Disney.
Disney?
Yeah.
What does Disney do?
I think they do everything. They own everything, right?
Okay, okay.
Yeah. We sold our company a few years ago to Disney, and I just took on a new role and tried to look into the next generation of TV, everything we call digital TV and online TV, etc.
And before Maker, maybe you can share, we have a lot of entrepreneurs.
Before Maker, I did another company called Go Viral that we sold to AOL. And before that, I did another company called Trade Doubler that we IPO'd.
So, and Rene, we also know each other from before, etc. So if you see when he sold Go Viral to AOL and then Maker Disney and some of the things that I don't know if we should elaborate here that he's doing to forward looking, then this is somebody I would pay strong attention to see the next steps from what he says. Samir.
Hi, I'm Samir Deen from Univision. We are the largest media company in the United States focused on the Hispanic marketplace. Our assets span television, cable networks, radio, local broadcast stations, and a growing digital portfolio, which I run. And for those of you who are in the room, Isaac Lee gave a keynote yesterday. We started off with a small portfolio of Hispanic-focused websites in the sports, news, and entertainment categories, and have expanded that reach today to include The Root, Fusion, the properties formerly known as the Gawker Media Group, now the Gizmodo Media Group, and The Onion. And so while our DNA is in TV, our future is to continue to grow in digital, and video is a very key piece of where our focus is in the foreseeable future.
And maybe just a word also about what you did prior to Univision, which is very relevant to this panel as well.
So prior to that, I ran a startup in the online food reservation and delivery space. And prior to that, I ran corporate development for a company called Scripps, which is the home of the Food Network, Home and Garden Television, Travel Channel, and really led part of their international expansion into Europe, Asia, and sort of built their digital business in addition to that. So.
And you were also very much involved with Script's first steps into the online world with TestMate.
That's correct. I forgot about that piece.
I'll remind you everything in your biographies.
Yeah.
I'm prepared.
You know my resume better than I do.
I only look hungover from the startups party yesterday.
So yeah, I've been around online and really spending a lot of time inside of big media thinking about the transformation to digital, not only from an investment perspective, but also how do you change the culture to bring in people who are digital native, give them the tools, give them the room and the opportunity to grow the next generation of the business.
Thanks. And Tom, tell us a little bit about you, about PlayBuzz.
I'm the co-founder and chief product of PlayBuzz. PlayBuzz is basically a content platform that allows publishers, advertisers, and users to create stories that promotes engagement. One of the problems that we're seeing is that a lot of talented, smart people are writing stories, but no one really reads them, and we want to solve that problem. We currently work with more than 10,000 publishers, among them Time Inc., Viacom, Hearst, News Corp, around the globe. We have offices here in Israel, in London, Hamburg, New York, Nashville as well, and LA. That's it, and a bit about myself. So I actually started coding at 12. That was at 97, so you can also calculate my age. Really early days.
I can't do that kind of math.
Not after yesterday, that's for sure. I saw you yesterday.
I have to say, you cannot come into this panel with all your youth and energy and give us the math of your age in our face. Please respect the elderly.
Okay. So really early days for the internet. So I feel like I grew up as the internet did, and now it's really an exciting time for media and internet in general, and happy to be a part of it as well.
So as you can see, we have here a very diversified panel in terms of first the type of companies. We have startups, we have media companies, publishing companies, TV companies, which are now in publishing, which are ran by entrepreneurs who sold their companies to media companies and the people who bought. So we see a lot of mixtures. For instance, Samir just mentioned that Univision, which is a broadcaster, is now also owner of Fusion, Gizmodo, Kotaku, The Onion, and a lot of different publishing brands. PlayBuzz is backed by, among others, by Saban and Disney, who are very big forces in that area, and they also look at PlayBuzz as a way to get to the publishing world. So the question to all the panelists is, we see now somebody picked up all the cards, reshuffling, and we're redealing this. If you can share a little bit thoughts about how you prepare to it, what are your companies doing, what are your views, what are the big mistakes you see around in the industry altogether, the audience would love it. So Aroon, we'll start with you again. How are you as a more traditional publishing company now evolving into the bigger media play?
Well, with all this panel, I'm the legacy guy who's the dinosaur or the elephant, you know, in the room. And
no, you can be the dinosaur, I'm the elephant.
Well, I don't want to be the dinosaur because dinosaur went extinct, right? Elephants still survive. But the challenge for a legacy company like ours is from an elephant to become like a cheetah, right? Who can really run fast, keep changing direction. And that's the challenges a company like ours faces. I think that what is happening in the digital world, brands are not going to take you only that far, right? I don't think that the brand loyalty exists anymore. It is basically the content in terms of articles. People really don't care where you come from up to a point, but later on they must see the value of your content and what use it is to you. I think one of the important things that the digital has taught us in terms of utility. Otherwise, journalists sit there in a bubble writing articles which nobody reads except their peers, and they think that, oh, they've done a great job. This interactivity has kind of changing the way we practice journalism. Number two is the fact, as I said, if brands are not loyalty, I think that going forward, you have to build your people as brands. So people will start reading people who they consider to be domain experts. So my challenge is actually to build a company which has domain expertise in every field, and those people are vertically trained to do multimedia. That is, they do video, they come on TV, they write digital stories, and build not a huge newsroom of hundreds of people, but actually build a commando news force, which is this multi-talented journalists. I think for me, that's the way forward.
Yeah, actually, it's pretty amazing because you said you're the legacy guy, but if I look at it, this is a very modern approach, and you know, Rene may refer to it as the influencers economy or the leaders economy, and as somebody who've been in the prime of Maker and now in the transition of making it part of a huge conglomerate, I'm sure maybe you can tell us a little bit about that and how the influencers in a big conglomerate like either Disney or the small guy at home or the guys working with the publishers, what do you think is their role in the industry right now?
So first of all, I think you have a very good point when it comes to building personalities that are domain experts. I think what we have seen digitally is very much that the influencers are perceived by the audience as authorities of their channel, of the content they're communicating. It's not only authorities, but they're also considered authentic. So when you create domain specialists that will be able to talk to their followers in an authentic way, I think that is probably the key of everything we have learned around Maker and how we develop Maker. How bigger companies like Disney and other brands have worked with influencers has been very simple. It's been by promotion, and I think already now we have come to a point where the effect of that is actually going down. You need to be much more sophisticated, and I think you need to go back to some of the things that you mentioned and start creating more original content with influencers. And influencers can be everything from people who are born like you into the internet, but it can also be authorities within a field that have been around for a very long time. So that's the next step that we are seeing right now. And some brands take it very serious, others still only use it as a promotional tool, which is wrong.
Well, actually, that's...
I'd like to know the views of the other panelists. Is the fact that, you know, there's a dilemma as a company, you build people as a brand in your company, and the question comes, how do you retain them, right? They become bigger than your own, than the medium which promotes them. So that's a question I don't know, Disney would be facing a lot.
I think this is not only Disney, but Maker is facing the same challenge. So we have gone from building these authorities, authentic authorities, to building franchises. So what we're doing with, let's say, a person like PewDiePie, who's probably the biggest star in the world right now with more than 50 million subscribers to his personal channel, we're building Revel Mode, which is basically entertainment brand and franchise around him and beyond him, right? Where we're bringing in other authorities and influencers and formats that can live across platforms. So I think building franchises and then eventually brands that can travel across screens and touch point to the consumer is the next steps.
Samir?
Yeah, from our perspective, I think I agree with what the other panelists have said. We've really been focused on, first of all, building really strong brands that are anchored in categories where there's a real connection with the audience. So if you look at, if you look at Gizmodo as one of the leading tech publication on the web, there's a real sense of community there. And so what we do is we want to in the case of Univision, we really leverage our talent as much as we can, and we're bringing them to not only to the TV screen, but making them multi-platform, making them connect with the audiences on Facebook Live. And so it's a multi-part strategy. One is make sure that you have brands that connect with the audiences, have editors that know how to connect with the audiences as well, and then ensure that you're building talent that can move across different platforms, whether that be your sort of traditional TV talent that wants to do different things. They know they want to be on Instagram, they want to be on Facebook, but creating opportunities for them to engage with their audiences. And then increasingly also working with influencers, knowing that depending on the platform, there's talent that's more, if you will, is a little bit more native to the platform, and finding a way to work with them across the entire portfolio.
So you think that, for instance, if we look at, we're trying to figure out who will be the next Oprah Winfrey, for that matter, she's a very known brand. She has her own media conglomerate and so on, but that was built. So how do you think can something like that still happen when the industry would be more distributed, or will this enable more Oprah Winfreys that will be able not to be operated by media companies, but themselves take the destiny in their own hands? Can talent get to the point that they are the brands and media companies themselves?
Look, I think it's I think what you've seen with growth of influencers on YouTube, as an example, they found success with an audience, and increasingly though, they also want to build a business, right? And so being a one-person shop is something that's very hard to do, right? You need infrastructure, you need distribution, you need marketing, you need promotion, you need licensing. So I think that the talent can change, and the platform can change, but I think there's still the need to bring the scale and the business know-how to all of these platforms. So will there be an Oprah Winfrey, another Oprah Winfrey? I'm sure there will be.
Excellent. And Tom, and just the audience came to this part of the world to see a little bit fights or something. Are you going to agree with everyone again, or maybe give us something?
Okay, so I'll politically say that I agree with all of them, but I want to add I think it's not by chance that influencers grow on new platforms. I think new formats and engaging content is what really fuels these influencers. And I think that's why it might be harder for influencers to grow on a traditional publisher venue. So that's one thing. And I think, unfortunately, brands are less important, the way I see it at least, than they used to. I think users are less brand loyal. They won't choose which content they're going to consume according to the brand, or not as much. And it's becoming, by the way, it's because of the recommendation engines and the way we discover content, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on other platforms. And I think it's becoming a game of producing very, very good content and creating the community around it, much more than some higher brand loyalty that drives usage.
And maybe you can just share with the audience a little story about how somebody from their living room can become a viral success, at least in Israeli standards?
Yeah, so the Israeli standards, we had, I think it was a week ago, there was a couple that read the IKEA magazine in their living room and said, wow, you know what, these descriptions of the furniture in IKEA, they sound very much like this politician called Yair Lapid in Israel. So how about we go on PlayBuzz and create this trivia item and show people the quotes and say whether it was from IKEA magazine or from Yair Lapid. It was a huge success.
I'll just give you an example. It would be a question, and we'll ask the audience who said something like, was it Yair Lapid or IKEA that said, the thing that unites us is the need to be united. Who thinks it was Yair Lapid, by the way? Who thinks it was IKEA? Okay, so I see 95% don't think. So you guys can still keep doing what you're doing.
Yes.
So go on and tell a little bit about what happened with that particular, again, two people in their home, going to PlayBuzz.com, press create that quiz, do publishing. What happens next?
So from that point on, they shared it on their Facebook. They probably thought a few people would watch it, and that would be it. But it was picked up by, I think, all of the Israeli publishers. Was actually on the evening news on all the different channels. They got interviewed. It's really, it was interesting. Just a normal couple, so they don't interview that well on television. But still, it was funny to see how it could happen to everyone. And I think this case shows really that it's all about good content. It's all about creating content that people would like to read, engage with, and perhaps share as well.
And again, let's make an analogy here from what Tom is saying. It's like a chef. If you give him a very basic knife, he'll still be very able to make you, to cook you a good meal, a great meal. I will probably kill, again, whatever meat I will try to slice or something like that, or if there are any vegans, then, I don't know, lentil. So I can butcher the lentil again. But if you give it to a good chef, even he will make something great from a medium knife. But if you give them the right tools and something that they can adopt, they will create things that you cannot think about. So what do you think, the knife or...
So there's no magic. If someone doesn't have talent, doesn't know how to cook or write in this case, it's garbage in, garbage out. But I think good formats, good products that show the content in the right way, in the way that we users consume content nowadays, through the mobile, on the go, that's the secret. Because if average time spent on an article nowadays is 15 seconds, no one is reading it. So we need to change something in order to promote that engagement and really connect with our users. I think platforms are doing it, the new platforms are doing it very well. And that's also one of the reasons, going back to the original questions, why we see influencers growing from these platforms.
Okay, now, now first I will try to say my last sentence in coherent English. So you're making the knives. Now, the three gentlemen on the left of you, they serve, I would say, meals in a lot of formats. Where do you see the role of new platforms, new tools, in order to build the new strategies for diversified media companies these days? Samir? We'll go the other order this time.
Look, I think you need the right mix of content, technology, and distribution, right? To be a successful media company in the world that we operate in. Just having one of the three, I don't think gets you there. So it's bringing great storytellers, giving them the right tools, and making sure that they can tell stories on each one of those platforms. And what works on Facebook doesn't work on YouTube necessarily, and what works on YouTube doesn't work on Snapchat, right? So it's really you have to become multi-platform, and you have to be multimedia. You need to be able to tell stories. At the end of the day, you have to tell a good story, but you have to really understand the platform and have the technology to enable that storytelling across all of these distribution points.
And Rene, same questions. You have, with Maker, I will stay with that mediocre analogy, you have a lot of cooks in Maker and so on, and you see also a lot of tools like PlayBuzz and other content management and creation systems. How do you see the roles of these technologies in the big media play?
So first of all, I'll agree that you need the nice mix of ingredients to create a successful company, a media company. However, I think the danger that traditional media companies are facing right now is that on the distribution side, there's fewer and fewer platforms who control the direct-to-consumer distribution, and suddenly they control the direct access to consumers, they control the data, and that is the big challenge that you have as a traditional media company. How do you reach out and go beyond the platforms and speak directly with the consumers? And that's why it's interesting to see PlayBuzz and other new platforms coming up, challenging more or less Google and Facebook, who are completely controlling that environment digitally right now, at least 80% of that environment. So that's the big challenge that we see now. And then we have companies coming up like Netflix, who are also going direct and also have the data and distribution. So traditional companies like yourself and like Disney, of course, need to sort that out in the near future.
And Aroon, can you share with us a little bit how you use those tools and technologies now available to take your company into the future?
Well, just to go back a little bit, I think the internet is such an ocean. The big challenge for everybody is to get that attention span from whoever your reader, viewer, etc. is. So every trick in the book is tried, which is looking at data analytics. I think personalization is a big deal, which all media companies are actually left, especially the legacy companies, are all left behind in. They just don't have the technology to personalize the way, say, e-commerce personalizes. And we've just not invested enough in that. And I think so that's a very big direction in which legacy media companies have to invest in, which is personalization. And then there are the tricks of the trade in terms of PlayBuzz and drones and 3D modeling and so forth, we're all in the business of telling stories. So the question is, how well can you tell your story? And how many times can you tell the same story? Because that's another thing which is happening, which is that you tell the same story in 10 different ways. And the fourth thing which is happening is that you have to tell it now in a small screen in mobile phones. The audience has all shifted, especially in India. We have now like 200 million mobile smartphones, and likely to grow in the next couple of years to 500 million. And people are actually just consuming content on the mobile phone. So now every part of your content designing has to be done for that little screen to give it that attractiveness and stickiness. So it's a variety of things that you have to do in order to get that attention span.
And do you start now measuring yourselves in a different way instead of revenues, how many users, how many engagements, etc.? Or is it in a transition? You're already fully digital and data-driven?
I think that, it's always follow the money, As people have huge viewership, etc., or unique visitors, they're not able to monetize it. So that's where I think that monetization has to be the benchmark. That's why building communities is really important. Because when you build communities of, say, domain expertise and so forth, then you get stickiness. People then come to those things because they are with the same community and you're getting value for money.
I think that this is the innovator's dilemma that you're really asking about, right? Because the money is still very much, let's say, in traditional TV, but we all know where it's heading. So how do we take the investments we're doing on a yearly basis into the money machine that is going in the wrong direction and put it into the new areas where the money is still not there to monetize, right? So the innovator's dilemma is something that incumbent companies need to deal with. And you mentioned it in your introduction around scripts and a few other places you work. And I think this is probably the toughest thing for any incumbent media company. How do you take the money away, you invest in the traditional and put it into new?
So you're earning in dollars and investing in dollars but earning cents. Yes. And that's the big dilemma of media companies, is the fact that they can't help not doing it, right? but the money is coming from traditional media. And what you're earning there, and especially with mobile phones, the rates on advertising even dropped even further. I mean, the new move is in fact from websites to mobile phones. And as for monetization, it's worse for the publisher.
Yeah, but I think we all on this panel know that at some point, the way these two ecosystems, the Chinese wall between the traditional advertising media ecosystem and the online digital, that's at some time it will break. I actually have to say, I see, first you see companies like Netflix is maybe an exception for a really disruptive company, but Disney already bought Maker Studio. They made an investment in PlayBuzz. NBC and invested in Vox. Univision bought a bunch of properties, which are, some of them are in the top 100 and very solid ones. I'm sure there are a few other examples. And at the end of the day, so there's Netflix, there are independent disruptor, there is Snapchat, but when we see all the incumbents that you mentioned doing these investment in acquisition, doesn't really, are they doing it to take it to the next stage, or are they doing it in some way to prevent the change, to delay it, to stop it?
I think it's interesting you're mentioning Netflix, because if you really think what Netflix was, a post-order company, right? You got your DVDs with the mail. And obviously, with a strong CEO that was very visionary, very early, he realized this is not the future. And there's a great case in Harvard Business Review on the HR process that he went through by literally changing his whole workforce to look into digital, and therefore he created this phenomenal company that we all know today. And I think that skill set is very rare. I mean, I don't know any other examples that I can mention in this industry here that has transformed so fast and so visionary. Okay, he's still not making money, but he's growing very fast, right? Of course, you can mention Nokia as a rubber company going into mobile phones, and they completely missed the smartphones, and maybe they will reinvent themselves again. But Netflix did it, right? They did it really, really well.
They actually did it, just to share with the audience, sorry to interrupt you, they actually did it for the first time. The time I really started to understand Netflix was, like you said, they were shipping DVDs by the mail. But at some point, I saw that they had more subscribers than Comcast, yet the majority of their revenues at that time was still from the mailing service. So how much growth was it there? So they grew and grew and grew, and then HBO started to make moves for a competition, etc. And then they started going into doing House of Cards and content and so on. And now we see Amazon doing production, even, and I swear, it's serious, it's not a joke. Microsoft is investing in content, Apple more in the services, etc. But they're always getting in a close connection to that. And now Verizon, of course, with AOL, and we mentioned Comcast, and so Microsoft, Google, Amazon are doing drones and content and selling books. What's going on? Is this going to stabilize? It's just going to get crazier? What do you think really will happen in the future of this business, which just keep changing faster?
I mean, what we see now is that everybody wants to own the value chain, right? From
everybody wants to own everything.
Yeah, but this is you can divide the internet maybe in three levels, right? The ones who basically own the consumer and the access to the digital journey. These are the big boys that you just mentioned, fighting now for owning everything. In the middle, you have the great content providers who are feeding all those pipes. There's also great companies out there, Vice, etc., coming from nowhere and creating great content. You guys are coming in that middle layer. And then you have all the monetization companies in the end. And right now, you want to be probably in the middle, because that's where you're agnostic to any of the big fights, and you can make a lot of money if you're successful. However, the big money, the 200 billion, 300 billion, 400 billion companies, will be the ones who are in the tier one, the Facebooks, the Amazons, the Netflix, and whoever will be there. And that's the fight we are seeing. It's just the beginning.
I think, like, if you look at So I read that 75% of digital spend goes to Google and Facebook. So first of all, it creates a market where other players are having a very hard time to monetize, and they spend dollars but earn cents. But second of all, if you also talk about the moves of acquisitions and companies going into other fields and stuff, I think that a lot of these companies bluntly basically provide themselves a supply side. They give themselves the chance to take the campaigns or add dollars and put them in their own properties. So basically owning the entire value chain. So it's true to Google and YouTube. It's even true to television channels buying publishers. So it creates, it allows them to offer a more robust deals or offering to advertisers.
And how your company, which is the more on the disruption side, how you think you can go into that world and change something or be a significant part of the ecosystem?
So at the moment, we're actually struggling with showing people that sometimes what they sell doesn't really work. I'm not sure everyone is still interested in learning that. And that's one of the things we struggle with. So you talked about data, for example. We find that when we provide data to an author or for a campaign, not many times people like to look at the data and say, oh, you know what, this didn't work. So either now I need to change that or maybe do something else for the future. And that's an educational struggle we're having. And I think it really reflects what's happening in the market level. I think advertisers are not smart enough about how they spend their money just yet. I am feeling it's changing, but it's a very slow change. And I think for us, like my responsibility at least, is to show that engagement is the key to everything, and to really provide transparency and tools to create good content and engaging content.
And Samir?
Look, I think the data piece is really important. Bringing, getting your editorial teams to understand how, it used to be about a page view or video view metric. I think what we are working on is getting them to really understand, to your point, okay, how far are they going? How much do they read? How far are their completion rates in this video? What does that tell us about the type of stories that we should be telling? Like, what is being shared? What is not being shared? And so, building that data aggregation and bringing it to not just making it data, but making it actionable is a really important piece of what we're focused on. And going back to your point about Netflix and Amazon, look, they provide an amazing user experience. For the most part, it's ad-free, so obviously that helps with their engagement. But it also provides a new distribution platform for content creators. Netflix is not going to create every single show that it makes. People want choice. People want great storytelling. And so I think I think that creates a lot of opportunity. We're now producing content for Netflix, which we never used to do before. So there's more opportunity to tell stories, to distribute content. But I think there's also an opportunity to use data more effectively to tell good stories.
Excellent. And now maybe we can get to the last question, and I'm sure there's an entrepreneur in the audience and who will watch it. What would be your advice to the entrepreneur, either just for life or where to focus, where you see more opportunities for innovation and disruption? Aroon, we want to start?
I think that as an entrepreneur, you should look at technology. I think the future is technology. Technology married with good content. If you invest in technology of whichever kind, whether it is personalization or some way evaluating the way content is served, I think the entrepreneurs who focus on technology are the ones who are going to succeed. One of my issues, which I've never really properly resolved, is the fact that the kind of things which get you visitors and unique visitors are a lot of this clickbait kind of content. How do you evaluate serious content and a visitor in terms of a person who is of a certain standing, intellectual level? Okay, we know a person who will read The Economist will be of a certain kind of person, right?
So actually, if I add what you said and what Samir said, and this is, for me, it's amazing insight. That was alone worth coming to this panel and not for speaking, is that still the data you're getting is getting better, it's getting more of it. I think both of you say there's an opportunity in how to gather that data, collect it, and so forth. Rene?
Yeah, look, I think we're all drowning in data, right? There's data coming from everywhere. The question is, how do you take that data and make it actionable, right? So, and how do you create the culture that wants to absorb that data? And I think to what Rene said, you need to have, you need to be bringing the type of people who can work in that kind of environment. And I think that's where a place where traditional media is also needs to make that shift. And in our case, we've got leadership that supports digital, wants it to continue to grow, understands that bring in the right people, give them the tools, and hopefully let them flourish in what they do. And I think that's why ultimately it comes down, if you're an entrepreneur, it's about finding the right technology, but ultimately also creating the right environment and finding the right people to be able to execute.
Mr. Pachis?
Yeah. So I would suggest try and fix something. Try and find something that is broken at the moment and fix it, rather than just doing more of the same. We have, there are too many things already existing. Just try and but there are a lot of things that are broken. And I think, and data is one piece, communities is another, platforms, distribution, monitoring. There's a lot of things to fix out there, and I would say focus on that.
And I would add to that, find a way to build a direct relationship with the consumer, right? At the end of the day, I think that's the most important piece. If you're, your chances are much better if you're at the top of the funnel, right? It's hard, but those are the bets that are worth making. Those are the bets that, frankly, why we're here in Israel, trying to find companies who can marry those three elements: the content, the technology, and the distribution.
And please don't try to work with the traditional incumbent companies. Let them come to you. If you approach them, your idea is not good enough. Do it yourself. Don't involve any of the traditional companies before you're large enough that they will chase you.
Yeah, actually, I think these are two great advice. Yeah, exactly. In Europe, that's what we're doing. One maybe little advice from me is again, first listen to people who tell you smart things. Have your vision, but at least in media and so on, try to create something which is really a great experience. I mean, if content is king, then user experience is czar these days, or something like that. Thank you very much. This was a great panel.